Picture this. You're scrolling through your bank account and you see a number that honestly terrifies you. Maybe it's negative. Maybe it's 3 digits and you've got another week until you get paid. Maybe it's sitting at a few thousand and you feel like you should be doing better, but you have no idea where to even start. Well, what if I told you there are 7 distinct levels of wealth, and understanding exactly which level you're at right now is the key to getting to the next one? Most people think wealth is binary. You either have money or you don't. But that's completely wrong. The reality is far more nuanced and actually far more encouraging once you understand it. Each wealth level completely changes how you think, how you make decisions, and what opportunities become available to you. It's like moving through different worlds. The stress you feel at level 1 is completely different from the stress someone might feel at level 4. The opportunities available at level 3 aren't even visible to people at level 1. And the problems that keep millionaires up at night are completely different from the problems keeping regular people stressed. The people who actually make progress aren't necessarily the ones earning the most money. They're the ones who understand what each level represents and what they need to do to graduate to the next one. I've seen people making 100 grand a year stay stuck because they don't understand the system. And I've seen people making 40 grand a year climb 3 levels in 5 years because they understood exactly what they needed to focus on. If you're somewhere on this spectrum and you actually want to know where you stand and how to accelerate your way up, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps clarify things for you. The first level is what I call the debt trap, and this is where a significant portion of the population is stuck right now. We're talking about negative net worth, or basically zero, maybe a few $100s in savings if you're lucky, but you've got student loans, credit card debt, maybe a car payment or a mortgage that's underwater. The thing about level 1 is that it's not necessarily about how much you earn. You could be making $50,000 a year and be at level 1, or you could be making $120,000 and still be at level 1. The determining factor is how much debt you're carrying relative to your assets. It's your net worth that matters, not your gross income. You're earning money, but it's disappearing before you even see it hit your account. Here's what's psychological about level 1 that most people don't understand. Your brain is literally locked in survival mode. Every financial decision feels dangerous. Should you change jobs? Absolutely not. You need this paycheck. You can't risk a gap in income because you don't have a cushion. Should you ask for a promotion? Forget it. You're barely holding on, and you're grateful to have this job at all. Should you invest in yourself or take a course that could boost your income? That sounds nice, but you can't afford the risk. The survival mode brain is incapable of strategic thinking about wealth. It's like your prefrontal cortex has been hijacked by fear and scarcity, and every waking moment is consumed by just making it to the next paycheck. You're playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And that's the fundamental problem with level 1. But here's something that might surprise you. Getting out of level 1 doesn't require a massive income. It just requires understanding one specific principle that most people completely miss. The first step out is getting your burn rate under control. You need to know exactly where your money is going. Not approximately, not your best guess, but actual numbers. Log into every single account, every credit card, your banking app, and add up what you've actually spent for the last 3 months. I know most people hate doing this because they know it's going to be ugly, but this is where the magic happens. Once you know that, you can find places to cut without feeling miserable. Maybe you're paying for subscriptions you forgot about. Maybe you're eating out more than you realized. Maybe you've got recurring charges from years ago that you never canceled. The math is simple, but it requires brutal honesty about your spending. Most people who break out of level 1 do it not by earning dramatically more, but by being intentional about what they spend. They realize they can get to the next level by changing their relationship with money without changing their income. And here's the beautiful part. It's not about deprivation. It's about awareness. Once you're aware, you make different choices automatically. That's the secret that takes them out of survival mode. So that's level 1. It's brutal, it's stressful, but it's also temporary if you understand what you need to do. The thing about breaking out of level 1 is that it doesn't happen all at once. You don't suddenly go from negative net worth to 50,000 overnight. It's a gradual transition where you slowly build a tiny buffer and then maintain it and then expand it. The psychological reward of finally seeing that first $500 saved in a dedicated savings account is actually substantial. It signals to your brain that you're capable of managing money intentionally. And that signal is what starts to shift your identity. Level 2 is what I'd call the foundation stage, and this is roughly between $0 and $10,000 of net worth. You're no longer negative, but you're not secure yet. Here's what changes when you hit level 2. Your brain finally stops screaming danger all the time. You have a tiny cushion. It's not much, maybe enough for an unexpected car repair or 2 months of basic expenses, but it's something. And that something is incredibly powerful. The psychological shift here is huge because suddenly you can start thinking about things other than immediate survival. You can start asking yourself questions like, where do I want to be in 5 years? Or maybe you wonder if you could actually afford to take a class or certification that could improve your career prospects. Level 2 people are still cautious, they're still stressed, but the panic has started to fade just a little bit. The cortisol levels in your body actually start to decrease. You sleep slightly better, you don't wake up in the middle of the night with financial anxiety coursing through your veins. What matters at level 2 is momentum. You need to see progress. The person who goes from 0 to 5,000 feels like they're making real progress. They tell their friends about it. They feel genuinely proud. But the person who goes from 5,000 to 6,000 sometimes feels stuck because the rate feels slow. This is actually the level where most people give up because they don't understand the mathematics of acceleration. They think the journey to 1,000,000 is linear. So at this pace, they do the math and realize it's impossible. They're like, okay, I've saved 5,000. At this rate, it'll take 200 years to get to 1,000,000. And that feels so discouraging that they just give up entirely. But they're wrong about the math. What's actually happening is they're still in the heavy lifting phase. They haven't reached the point where compound interest starts to significantly contribute yet. At level 2, you're earning this through pure discipline and intentionality. That's harder psychologically, but it's also more valuable because you're developing the identity that makes everything after this possible. You're becoming the type of person who saves money. You're becoming the type of person who can delay gratification. And that identity shift is worth more than the actual dollar amount. Level 3 is 50,000 in net worth, and this is where things start getting genuinely interesting. Here's why. At 50,000, you've crossed an invisible threshold where your money starts doing real work for you. You've got enough in investments that the returns are starting to matter. Maybe you're earning 1,000 or 1,500 a year just from compound growth. It sounds like nothing compared to what you earned to accumulate that 50,000, but it's meaningful. And more importantly, it's exciting. People at level 3 start talking about their investments differently. Instead of being terrified of market volatility, they start getting interested in how to maximize their returns. They start reading about index funds and retirement accounts. They're thinking strategically about wealth for the first time. Instead of just asking, how do I survive? They're asking, how do I optimize this? How do I get the best returns? Should I be doing anything different with my money? But here's something psychological that happens at level 3 that most people don't anticipate. You start to feel like you might actually pull this off. The financial freedom that seemed absolutely impossible a few years ago suddenly feels like it's actually achievable. This is a pivotal moment because belief is the difference between people who keep going and people who quit. This is when people often make critical decisions about their career. Maybe they finally ask for that promotion they deserve. Maybe they start exploring job changes because now they have a buffer and they're not desperate. Maybe they actually have confidence in a way they didn't before. I've seen this happen countless times. Someone hits level 3, feels that shift in their mindset, and suddenly they're asking for things they never would have asked for before. They're willing to negotiate. They're willing to take risks. Level 3 is also where your social dynamics start to shift. You're no longer constantly stressed about money in the way you were before. You sleep better. You're more patient with people. You actually have mental space to focus on things other than survival. And here's something people rarely talk about. Your relationships improve because you're not carrying that constant financial anxiety into every interaction. You're present. You're engaged. You're not thinking about money every single second. Now, here's what's interesting about the jump from level 3 to level 4. It doesn't take as long as you might think. If you've successfully made it to level 3, you've got the discipline, the systems, and the mindset in place. You understand how to save. You understand how to invest. You're no longer fighting yourself. And that makes the jump to level 4 much faster than the journey to level 3. Most people who hit level 3 and stay focused can reach level 4 within 2 to 4 years, depending on their income. It's exponential acceleration happening right before your eyes. Level 4 is 100,000, and this is the milestone that changes everything. I know we've talked about this number before in other videos, but it bears repeating because what happens at 100,000 is absolutely critical to understand. This is officially the halfway point to becoming a millionaire when you account for compound interest. Most people don't realize this. They think 100,000 is 1/10 of the way to a million, but that's not how exponential growth works. When you hit 100,000, your investments are generating somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 a year in returns alone. That's real money. That's like getting a small raise every single year that you didn't have to work for, and every year you stay invested, that number goes up. You're starting to have real passive income, money that shows up in your account without you doing anything. But the real shift at level 4 is psychological confidence. You're no longer wondering if you can build wealth. You've proven to yourself that you can. You've sacrificed, you've been disciplined, you've stayed consistent through market downturns and temptations and boring periods where progress felt slow. And now you're standing at a number that most people will never reach. This does something to your brain that's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it. You start to believe in yourself in a way that extends beyond just money. You become more willing to take risks in your career because you know you have a safety net. You could lose your job and survive for a while. That changes your negotiating position completely. You're more willing to invest in education or skills because you understand the return on investment. You can see the math clearly now. You're literally operating from a different place than people at the lower levels. People at level 4 often get recruited for better jobs. They get offered opportunities that people at lower levels never even hear about. Headhunters start calling. Business partners start approaching them. It's not because they're suddenly smarter or more talented. It's because they're operating with more confidence and fewer constraints. Desperate people make poor decisions. Confident people make strategic ones. The jump from level 4 to level 5 is interesting because at this point, you're no longer just saving and investing anymore. You're starting to think about optimization and strategy. You're thinking about tax implications. You're thinking about diversification. You might start exploring real estate or business ownership because you have the capital and the confidence. Level 4 taught you that you can build wealth. Level 5 is about leveraging that wealth in multiple ways. And this is where people often accelerate dramatically because they stop relying purely on their job income and they start creating multiple streams of wealth. Level 5 is $250,000 in net worth, and this is where I'd call the wealthy mindset really takes root. At this point, your money is generating somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 annually just from returns. You're no longer thinking about whether you can survive a financial emergency. You're thinking about how to structure your life for maximum freedom and impact. People at level 5 typically have multiple income streams, or they've become very strategic about their job choice. They might have real estate investments alongside their stock portfolio. They're thinking about tax optimization and legacy planning in a way that level 4 people haven't started to think about yet. They're working with professionals like accountants and financial advisors who specialize in wealth management. Here's something that happens at level 5 that's really important. You start to understand that the rules of the game change when you have real assets. Doors open, people take you more seriously, you have options that poor people literally cannot have. You might get offered business partnerships or investment opportunities because you've demonstrated financial competence. You might have access to financial advisors or investment opportunities that require minimums that you can now meet. Maybe you get access to a hedge fund or a private equity opportunity. Maybe someone invites you to be part of an angel investment group. These things don't happen at lower levels because you don't have the capital and you don't have the track record of managing money well. Level 5 is where people often start thinking about giving back or building a legacy. They've won the game of personal wealth accumulation and now they want to do something with it. The psychological piece here is that you're no longer focused on money as a measure of self-worth. You're no longer proving anything to anyone. You've already proven it. You're focused on what money can actually do in the world. Some people start charitable foundations. Some people become mentors. Some people start investing in causes they care about. Level 6 is $500,000 in net worth, and this is officially generational wealth territory. Your investments are generating somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 every year in returns. That's enough to live on in many parts of the country without working at all. You could potentially step back from work entirely at this point if you wanted to, though most people at level 6 are still very motivated and active in their careers. But here's the thing, the option is there. You're no longer working because you have to. You're working because you want to. That changes your entire relationship with work. What's fascinating about level 6 is the psychological freedom that comes with truly knowing you're set for life. You're not going to stress about retirement. You're not going to worry about unexpected expenses. You could lose your job tomorrow, and it would be an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. That kind of security changes how you show up in every area of your life. People at level 6 often become business owners or take significant career risks because the downside is genuinely limited. They can afford to be patient and selective about their next opportunity. They're not desperate. And when you're not desperate, you make better decisions. You negotiate better. You create better outcomes. Level 6 is also where most people in this income bracket start to think seriously about tax strategies and wealth protection because now there's real wealth to protect. They might work with estate planners or wealth managers. They're thinking decades into the future about what happens to their money and their family after they're gone. They're thinking about generational wealth, not just personal wealth. Level 7 is the final level, and this is 1 million plus in net worth. This is the actual milestone most people think about when they think about being wealthy. And here's what's wild about level 7. The math accelerates so dramatically that going from 500,000 to 1 million feels almost easier than going from 100,000 to 200,000, even though it technically takes more time on a calendar. Your investments are generating between 40 and 50,000 annually. That's a solid middle-class income just from investment returns. You're no longer thinking about building wealth. You're thinking about deploying it, protecting it, and deciding what legacy you want to leave. People at level 7 have typically made peace with their relationship with money. They've won the game, but they've learned that winning the game doesn't necessarily make you happier. Money stops being the primary motivator. What matters at level 7 is what you do with the freedom and security you've built. Some people become philanthropists and donate millions to causes they care about. Some people launch businesses purely because they're passionate about the idea. Not because they need the money. Some people focus on mentoring younger people and helping them navigate these levels faster than they did. Some people invest in their communities or start foundations. Some people literally change the world because they finally have the resources and time to do it. And here's the thing. Most millionaires report that the psychological piece of being at level 7 is way more interesting than the financial piece. They have enough money. They always will have enough money. Financial stress is completely gone. But money doesn't solve every problem. The question becomes, what's actually worth doing with the rest of your life? That's a much harder question than how do I make money? What's fascinating about these 7 levels is that they're not just abstract concepts. They represent real psychological and mathematical thresholds that humans experience throughout their wealth-building journey. The difference between level 2 and level 3 might only be $40,000 on the surface, but psychologically and mathematically, it's astronomical. Same with level 4 to level 5. Same with level 6 to level 7. Each threshold unlocks new possibilities, new thinking patterns, and new opportunities that weren't available before. This is why most financial advice fails for most people. It treats everyone as if they're at the same level. Someone at level 1 doesn't need advanced investment strategies. They need to cut expenses and stop bleeding money. Someone at level 4 doesn't need to know how to scrape together every dollar. They need to know how to position their assets and take calculated risks. Someone at level 7 doesn't need to know how to save aggressively. They need wisdom about what to do with capital and how to make a lasting impact. The same advice doesn't work for everyone because everyone is playing a different game at their respective level. Now, here's the thing that ties all of this together, and it's really important. Each level isn't just about a number. Each level represents a fundamental shift in how your brain operates and what becomes possible for you. Most people think they're trapped at their current level forever. They look at someone at level 7 and think, well, they must have gotten lucky or inherited money or had some advantage I don't have. Well, some people do get lucky. Some people do inherit money. But the vast majority of millionaires in this country are self-made. The person at level 7 usually started at level 1 just like everyone else. They just understood that each level required a different mindset and a different strategy. Level 1 requires discipline and sacrifice. You have to cut expenses ruthlessly. You have to get brutally honest about your spending. Level 2 requires consistency and patience. You have to keep going even when progress feels slow. Level 3 requires strategic thinking. You have to start optimizing and thinking about your next moves. Level 4 requires confidence. You have to believe in yourself enough to take real risks. Level 5 requires systems and diversification. You can't be putting all your eggs in one basket anymore. Level 6 requires boldness and risk-taking. You have to be willing to swing for bigger opportunities. Level 7 requires wisdom about what to do with wealth once you have it. Money without wisdom is just a tool for self-destruction. The beautiful part about understanding these levels is that it removes the mystery. You know exactly where you are right now. You know what you need to focus on to get to the next level. And maybe most importantly, you know that it's actually possible because millions of people have done it. They didn't all start with 6-figure salaries or wealthy parents. They just understood the game and played it consistently until they won. If you're at level 1 right now, don't be discouraged. Focus on getting to level 2. Cut your expenses, increase your income even a little bit, and prove to yourself that you can manage money intentionally. Once you hit level 2, the psychological shift will motivate you toward level 3, and that's how you actually do this. Not by thinking about becoming a millionaire immediately, but by focusing on the next level and understanding that each step up changes what becomes possible for you. The levels aren't as far apart as they seem when you're standing at the bottom looking up. Each level teaches you what you need to know for the next one. The person who makes it to level 4 is on track to eventually reach level 7. The only difference is time and consistency.